Hey everybody, it is the top of the hour. We're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. We'll probably go about 2 after is when we'll really dig in and get started. Right now, we're going to give it a few, just like I said, about 2 more minutes for people to join. We have people jumping on the webinar right now as we speak. So hang tight for about another minute and a half and we'll get this thing started. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump in here. Give me 1 second. We're going to switch over to cameras. That way you get to see our gorgeous faces. And yeah, I'm being a little sarcastic there, at least for myself. So everybody, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Robert, if you want to go ahead and kick on your camera, we'll let everybody see who they're talking to. My name is Justin Shelley. I'm the CEO of Master Computing here in the Dallas area. Denton, Texas is where our office is. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Robert Hunt today. Robert, thank you for being here. I'll make a quick introduction first, and then I'm gonna invite Robert to share some of his story too. So first of all, the reason we're doing these webinars is we're just looking for opportunities to come together as a community. You know, it's oversaid, it's overstated, but we're all struggling. We're all trying to figure out what the future holds, how we deal with the crisis that we're going through. And I'll be honest, I think some of us are even tired of talking about it, and yet we remain in the situation. So for what it's worth, we wanted to come together. There are so many people in you know, and right now we're focused on the Dallas Metro, but there's so many people with so much information to share that I put together this series of webinars so that we could all share our collective knowledge and hopefully, you know, lift each other up and get through this thing. So that's the purpose of these. Again, Justin Shelley with Master Computing. We do IT consulting. We focus on cybersecurity, prevention, and you know, large and medium-sized business here in the Metro. But we're not really here to talk about that today. So I'm going to make a quick introduction, like I said, to Robert Hunt. Robert is the owner of Renaissance Executive Forums of Dallas, and he leads CEO peer groups. And I'm going to ask him about that here in a second because I love peer groups. But first, Robert, I've done a few of these webinars now. We're coming up on 10 maybe. It's not a ton, but a few. And you are the first one that sent me a headshot holding a shotgun, smoking a cigar. So please tell me a little bit about your choice of the pictures there.
Well, you know, part of my style is I'm very irreverent. People are way too uptight in life in general, and God's just given me a lot of joy for the life that I get to live, and I like to pass that on to the world around me. I find that business can be overwhelming. The CEOs and business owners that I work with, they just carry such a burden. it's a heavy responsibility. If you own your own company, you know what we're talking about. And I just like to make it a little more fun. So I was invited to go to this fundraising event. So I had a tux on, and my son said, "Let's get a picture of you." And so, well, get my shotgun out because I need that for this picture. And then grabbed a cigar, and actually I had a glass of bourbon sitting there next to it. I don't know why it's not in that picture, but that rounds out everything that should have been in that picture. But just trying to make fun of some of the stress of life and try and make things a little more enjoyable.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Like I said, it caught my attention, and I love putting that picture up there. I just didn't have one of my own that could match it, unfortunately. And
Oh, there's a goal.
I thought about pulling out a shotgun and, going through the whole thing, but I didn't. So anyways, the other thing that really caught my attention in your bio when you sent that over to me and preparing for this webinar was that you put together, and I want to read it so I say it right, CEO tip of the day for both Alexa and Google. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't believe you when I saw that, so I pulled out immediately my phone and I said, okay, Google, tell me the CEO tip of the day. Oh, and I just lit my phone up by doing that. So let me shut that off.
Here's CEO.
So it started talking to me.
Nice, it's working.
But it's true, it works, and apparently that's all your information. So tell me a little bit about that.
One of the things that I say over a lot of times is that the difference between stress and pressure is knowledge. And there is such a plethora of information, but not necessarily knowledge. And so what I've tried to do is bring value to the people in the DFW area who don't know me, as a way of hopefully kicking over the door and have a discussion about what's important to them. So I know that my clients are always seeking to understand things better. And so I hired someone to create a skills that works on Alexa or Google. And it's you ask your Alexa or your smart speaker to open the CEO tip of the day. And I've loaded up 50 or 60 so far of these tips that are based on conversations that we've had in our monthly CEO peer group meetings. And things that we all think about, but sometimes we get so mired or we get so deep in the weeds, we forget the truth of these things. And I just loaded them up based on the experiences I've had, and they're there to share for everybody else.
So real quickly, my main question here is, how did you convince Alexa and Google to take this information in and then share it back out? What does that process look like? Is that a quick conversation?
Well, there's a company who did it for me in Southern California that I met.
Okay.
A guy who's they do skills, and I think it cost me a couple $1,000s to create the platform and then to do all the setting up and register the name CEO tip of the day. But then the hard part was just loading up all those words, because they have to be word for word put in there correctly. Right. And some words carry over to others and they sounded funky when they would be said. So I had to go back and put an extra space or change a word. But you have the right to build whatever kind of skill you want. They just open the door for you to share your knowledge.
Interesting. See, I did not know that. That's new. So one more thing, I forgot to mention this earlier, and I told you I would do it. We've got several people on the call today, and what I'd like to invite everybody to do real quick, first of all, if you would just punch in either to the chat or to the questions module, and those are two separate things, just let me know that the audio and the video are both coming through okay. We have had some problems with both, as everybody in the world is turning to online presentations. So if you wouldn't mind, just help me out and make sure that we have the technology working properly. So I'm going to take just a second, Robert, and make sure that people are hearing us before we dig in too much.
Yeah, that'd be kind of weird to have a recording that no one can hear.
Yeah, I've been on the other end of those, where I'm listening and you can't hear anything, and the presenters are just going on and they've got all this great information and it's not coming through at all. So I wanted to make sure that's not the case, and we've got people responding that they can hear us fine, video looks good. So all right, so we'll continue. Now I wanted to kind of launch into our conversation today by the other thing that really stood out to me as you and I became acquainted was that you run this peer group, and that's a term that I'm relatively new to. I say relatively, I've been in business a little over 20 years, but for the first 14 of those, I was a man on an island. Like, I had no idea that I could communicate with and openly share information with my competitors. And so I accidentally stumbled upon a group that targets, it's a group for owners of IT businesses, and it's specifically for marketing, but it bleeds over into sales and operations. And I think you mentioned earlier as we were preparing here for the call, therapy, right? You know, as business owners, it's lonely and it's tough. And, you know, we catch a lot of crap in the market for being greedy and wanting profits and, you know, firing everybody. And, you know, there's a lot of, we just catch a lot of grief for it as business owners. And also as a business owner, you don't really have a lot of friends in your own company by nature, right? You really can't, I don't know, there's a weird line there. And so it's really important to have somebody that you can reach out to and that you can share information and you can just be completely open and transparent. And like I said, that was a new concept to me about 6 years ago. But once I became involved in that type of a system, it completely changed my world. It was a night and day difference. So if you wouldn't mind, just take a minute and talk about the group that you run. Maybe talk about who are the typical members of that group? Are there certain industries? Are there certain revenue windows, sizes, or whatever? Who is that group for? And tell me a little bit about how you run it.
Great. You know, the idea of peer learning has been around a long time, and there's all kinds of peer learning groups out there. The thing that might be different than what you're doing, we don't allow anyone to be a competitor or any kind of a threat to have an open and transparent conversation. And there are great mastermind groups out there where people come together around an industry. I belong to many of them over the years in my career. I grew up with a background in marketing, and I was part of aerospace and in the printed circuit board markets. And we had best practice groups that came together to meet on a regular basis and share what we were doing to serve the market. But you would only be so transparent because they are your competitor. And so there's always a bit of a hedge there. In our groups, it's complete transparency and vulnerability. That's what we're seeking. So you wouldn't have a supplier with a customer. You wouldn't have a competitor. You wouldn't have a spouse with another spouse, or even a family member if you really couldn't be transparent. Well, we just don't. We assume you wouldn't be able to be. And so it's really about setting up an environment where leaders can have a safe place to be themselves, to be able to share whatever's on their mind, to learn, but just to get support. Because as you mentioned, it is lonely at the top. That's an old phrase, but it's very true. And when you're responsible for anything and everything that goes on in your business, and you're the last say of it all, everything gets dumped on you, and the expectations are you have to know everything about everything. It's overwhelming. And so having a place where you can go and be safe and say, I don't know what I'm doing, and I really need help, and you feel willing to be vulnerable and transparent, that's when you can learn. You can walk in with a problem, say, this is the challenge I'm having, or an opportunity that's just as important, and you can walk out with a solution. That to me is magic. And even though I don't do what you do, and she doesn't do what you do, we have the same 4 things we focus on: people, time, technology, and cash. It's the same in every business, but you have 150 people and they have 42 people. You service the construction industry, she's in healthcare, but it's still about those same things. So when we bring that all together as a collective intelligence, it's wicked how much we can get solved in a really quick time.
No,
you also asked about typical companies and sizes. I don't really focus on that. My number one focus is, does the person I'm meeting with have the character and competency that allows them to be in a group like this? Then we look at the chemistry. I'm not seeking all letters with C, but it just worked out that way. Is there chemistry that would allow them to be in the group? And the last one really is a business acumen that brings value to the group. So if someone's brand new, they're going to be asking all these questions, but they're not going to bring as much value to what the group learning is going to be like. Big or small, men or women, young or old, doesn't really matter. They have to be open and transparent and willing to learn from other people. And that's the way you really get the value out of a group like that.
I love the open and transparent part. I think that you're right. That's absolutely critical. You touched on one point that I didn't mention. As you said, you have to keep some boundaries so that people can be honest and open. One of the things in the group that I'm a part of is, while we're all in the same industry and technically competitors, are small groups where we meet in weekly are geographically separated. So like everybody in my group, I've got 2 guys that are in different parts of Canada. One's in Chicago, one's in Idaho. So we separate it that way, but it's important. You have to set up the system, however you do that, so that people can be, brutally honest. And that's the only way we're going to get help. So on the subject of it being lonely and it being a struggle and a challenge, and honestly, whether you run a business or you're just trying to navigate life right now, or anytime, because life is never certain, we just think it is. But as we're going through these challenges and you're running your peer group with business owners and with just people, right? Because that's what we all are. What are the things that they're bringing up and how are you walking them through that? So let's just kind of launch into what you're seeing out there in the world and what some of the solutions are to that.
Yeah, everybody's going through crazy changes right now. Just the fact that you're having to adjust your workforce to be remote in most cases. Now, some of my clients have things that cannot be remote, manufacturing companies, construction companies, even one of our clients is an IT staffing company. And those people in some cases have to be on site. One has clients that are in the hospital and a data center. And so there are things that you just can't work remotely in some cases, but in most cases they are adjusting their workforce to work from home or work remotely. And that's presented its own series of problems from security. You know this.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was working at the office except a few sales guys 6 months ago. And then now everybody's at home with some old crappy laptop that doesn't have any security controls, that is not running correctly. And so, you take a laptop, you throw them at home and it doesn't work and they can't get into the VPN and they continue to have problems. And they're going on Zoom, and now Zoom's got all these worries about security. And now the IT department says no more calls on Zoom. You got to stay off Zoom. I mean, it's just a crazy new world that they're all dealing with. But working remote is a big topic and how to do that. Everything that we're facing today as a topic of discussion, we always switch it around to say, how can we make success out of this? Instead of spending all our time going, oh, I got problems, I don't know what to do, and these people have to work from home, and my customers aren't ordering, we say, okay, so how do we make this into a profitable result? The Depression, it's a great statistic. There were more millionaires created during the Depression than any other time in American history. And we have to look at this as how can I be not an opportunist, but how can I be a realist? If clients are out there and they're freaking out and they're not buying from you, what can you do to serve them now? Maybe you're not making any more money, but you're not making money either way. But are you keeping that customer? Are you keeping them happy so that when things turn around, they're sticking with you? Are you keeping the good employees that you've wanted to keep and don't lose them? What are you doing to help them? And if you had to let go of someone, are you laying them off well? We had some discussion about furloughs versus layoffs. And we talked about it from a tax perspective, from a financial perspective, from an HR perspective. And then really, how do we maintain our culture in the process of laying people off? One of my clients is laying off a bunch of people today. That's very sad. And he was all torn up. But how do you maintain the culture that stays behind? The people who go, they've got their own series of problems, but everybody who stays behind, now they're thinking, well, am I next?
Right.
And now I got to pick up and work 2 jobs because we only have less people here. And now I'm working remote, so I can't get stuff done. You got to maintain your culture while you're doing all that. That's its own challenge right there.
And you're absolutely right. Culture is, I'll tell you, that's been one of my, at least the thing that's most on my mind, as I've got employees spread out now. We aren't coming into the office as much. Some of us do have to. Yeah, maintaining that culture, that can be tricky. I'm going to come back to that, but I wanted to make another point and now I'm going to lose that. I lost it already. So let's talk about culture.
About the culture?
Yeah, well, so, and one of the things that recently I started doing, and I want to run it by you, let me pause real quick. Everybody in the audience, if you guys have questions, please punch them into the chat again or the question feature. This is kind of open forum today. So I'm going to talk about some things. I'm going to ask Robert some questions. I'm going to try to get his advice because, hey, I'll take free advice at any time I can get it. But this is for all of you guys. So please throw some stuff at us. So one of the things I did recently, and I came slow to it because I want to believe, and I keep hoping that this thing isn't going to last as long as I'm afraid it's actually going to last. And so I was kind of a late adopter. But as I realized that we might be in this for the long haul, and by long, that could mean anything from a couple weeks to a few months, I don't know. But so I just started sending out an email at the end of every day that includes everybody on the team. And we're a small group, so this works for us, where, I just asked everybody to share, what were their major accomplishments during the day and what was the best thing that happened to them. And so we started doing that at the end of the day, and we've only done that a couple times now. And I don't know if that'll evolve into something else, but what do you see, what are people doing that is successful in keeping that culture, maintaining the culture? Whether they're laying people off or not, we still have a different dynamic. So what are some of the things that they're doing successfully?
Boy, they're not doing a lot successfully right now, because I think that what they're trying to do is maintain some sort of organizational constant. A lot more effort's been put into sort of readjusting, but I think the parts I see that are being done well is the consistent communication. Where there's a lack of truth, people make up their own. And when we don't answer and explain things to people, we cause more problems than not. And so you think you're a better communicator than you really are, but we're really not great communicators. Remember, communication is not what is said, it's what's understood. And then you throw in the whole variable of being and working remote and people not being able to sit face to face and see body language and look in someone's eyes and understand something. So even if you do a video call, it's still not the same. So there's this whole learning curve that's got to be done. Those who are inventing new ways to communicate with their team and keep people calm are doing really well through that process. So I think improved communication, improved frequency, more focus on the kinds of things that can derail them, such as, if we're really watching cash flow, are you talking about cash flow? Are you reminding people not to spend money, to look for ways to be creative about how I can do something remotely instead of driving somewhere, deferring expenses. Cash is king all the time, but certainly in a time like this, where people are going to not pay you and your business because they're not getting paid, it's all going to roll downhill. We've got to really be smart about that. So I think improved communication is one of the things I see done well. I think people who are really looking for something new and exciting to do, and then will get really good at it during this time, that's going to be a new opportunity. Some of my clients have launched new products, gone into new markets, offered new product lines. No one that so far has said anything about buying another company yet, but I think in the months ahead, we might see some of that. Those who have the cash to turn around and take advantage of the situation with the company that wasn't managed well, and all of a sudden now they're going bankrupt because of these issues. Smart companies that kept their cash under control will weather this storm just fine, but most companies out there do not manage their cash well, and we'll see a lot of people that will file bankruptcy because of this.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of it, right? It's gonna hurt no matter how we look at this. On the communication front, the emails I talked about, and that was just, like I said, I'm a little bit late. I loved your point about we think we're better communicators than we are. The reason that I started doing those emails is because I actually had an employee come up to me last week, and he said, that he's got a family member that is encouraging him to go take another job that was more secure. And he didn't directly ask me, but he was indirectly asking me, do I still have a job?
Wow.
And it kind of hit me. I was like, yeah, I mean, it should have been an obvious thing to me that people are nervous about that. But I was so laser focused on what my challenges were and how I'm going to deal with my direct problems that I didn't communicate that. I had definitely thought through it, and I had a plan, but I hadn't talked to him about it properly. And so my introductory email was, hey, here's what I'm doing to protect your jobs.
Good.
And so, and then it stemmed out to all of us talking about what we're doing, because I think that there's value in just knowing that we're all working hard. Where we can't see it, we're not face-to-face interacting anymore. I wanted us to at least have that knowledge that, of what we're all doing. So, real quick,
let me add one more thought to that real quick.
Yeah.
Employees want to know that they matter and they're heard. And
Yes.
if you ask 5 employees a question, you get 5 different answers, and you can't change 5 different ways. But they at least want to know that they matter. And we get so busy that we just think, listen, just go do it. And as a general rule, everybody wants to be respected enough to know that they're heard. So especially now when things are more tumultuous, shaken up,
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
We need to over communicate. If you normally would communicate here, then you need to be communicating here. And it doesn't have to be more frequent, but it has to be more focused. And so maybe you have a standing, I have some clients who are out in the field, they have standing Monday morning meetings and everybody has to be there at a certain time. It's a standing meeting. That way we know it's not going to go long, but it's every Monday morning. I have other clients who have a call every morning, depending on what's going on. They have different reasons for that. But the frequency is one aspect, but the things you choose to talk about, it's really important that you give your employees a place to be heard, that you're asking the kind of questions. What challenges are you seeing out there? What do you think's next? What's an opportunity? They're the ones in the field. They're the ones going to come up with a great idea if you listen to them. So now especially we need to be listening to our teams and finding out what things they see that could be an opportunity for us.
Right. Let me shift gears a little bit. This is something admittedly, I'm spending way more time on Facebook than I'd really like to say publicly right now. But I had in scrolling through, I ran upon a post that an old acquaintance of mine from high school had shared. And there's a lot of talk about how we can take advantage of this situation. We can learn more. And honestly, when I started these webinars, it was about, hey, we've got a little bit of downtime. How can we up our skill level? How can we dig in and maybe we're furthering our career, maybe we're shifting careers, whatever the case is. But this post was about, hey, give yourself a break. And those are my words. I don't remember how it was worded in this article, but with everything going on psychologically and emotionally, we might not be able to handle everything that society is heaping on us right now. So whether that's a message we need to share with our employees or just with each other, I think it's important to at least, maybe you and I can bat this around a little bit. How do we help each other through the unspoken emotional duress that we're going through? Is it really important right now to take advantage of every opportunity that comes to us? Or, do we give ourselves a break and take a day off from time to time, and maybe we take a long lunch, or, so talk a little bit about that while we're talking about culture within organizations. How can we be supportive of what everybody's going through right now?
We work really hard through our peer groups to have people focus on all aspects of life. We don't just talk about business. If your marriage is in the toilet, you're not running a very good company. And if your health is in the toilet, you're not bringing your A game to the thought processes every day. So we've always had a very well-rounded approach to looking at life. So right now is a great way to clean up or refocus and to take advantage of that well-rounded life. And so maybe you choose not to do some things and choose some other things. I'm certainly having more time at home with my son, but he's finished his last year of high school, and they give him a big load of homework to keep him busy, I guess. But he doesn't come out of his room for hours. I thought we'd have all this great time. We'd go do stuff together, and I see him at 7 o'clock at night. So
Right.
we'll have to kind of roll with the situations that are in front of us. But my wife and I are having great times together. I'm having a nice slower morning because I don't have to be somewhere at 7 in the morning. I can join a call at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I can sit and have my time with the Lord and read my Bible and not be in a hurry and have coffee and kind of roll out. And it's a beautiful morning every morning. And so I think there's a little subtle thing you can add here. Take away something here. I'm not spending 2 hours a day on the road, so I can replace that with working out, ride my bike. We can do yard work we couldn't get to before. I just moved. This is my brand new office. I sold my house last month and I moved into this house. So there's 1,000 things I want to do here. So we just keep ourselves busy, but prioritize things that align with your vision for your life. If there are things that you want to do that you've not been able to get to, take some advantage to learn things, to meet with friends, to invest in yourself, and then turn down other things that can tend to overwhelm you at the same time.
Yeah. Just a personal example, this morning I mentioned that I run, or I've got to find the right word. Captain is the word we use, but I kind of facilitate one of these peer groups that we were talking about. And Wednesday morning is our weekly meeting. Well, this morning, my 14-year-old boy, he needed attention, and he didn't directly say it, but I knew, and I could tell. And so I pinged my group and I said, hey, I need somebody else to volunteer to run the group. And I didn't show, and I took him to breakfast, and then, I said, okay, well, let's head back home. Well, Dad, I'd really like to just go on a drive.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So, we spent about 3 hours this morning. And so partly that was because I had just read that little thing on Facebook. Part of it was because I knew that he was struggling and he needed some time. And part of it was that I knew that I had become, I've let myself get so overwhelmed with what's going on that it's really easy, and one of the things I've always struggled with owning a business is, and I don't like the word balance, but managing maybe is a better word, managing my priorities between, and I don't even like between, because it's all intermixed, but with family and personal health, working out, however you do handle that, and business and spirituality and all of the things that we have to do, I get out of kilt pretty quick. I get super focused on some things and I let other things go. And so that was just a moment or, a time where I felt I needed to bring that back
That was a
into
good decision.
Yeah,
I think more times than you probably would recognize, you're not out of kilt. It's that you feel bad that you're not doing something you think you should do. Doesn't
correct.
mean you really are out of kilt. You just have a feeling. But the reality is you already have way more to do than you ever could do. And so
Yeah,
if you just allow that to run your life, you're always going to feel like you're behind. We talked about this a few years ago when we were setting up this group, is what kind of life do we want to have? We don't believe there's such a thing as work-life balance. We do
right,
believe there's something called work-life integration.
right.
And what that requires is that you be one person everywhere you go. So I don't have to turn to be a jerk at work and then go home and treat my family poorly. I can be myself everywhere. And then I can pop in and out of these things seamlessly. If my wife calls me in the middle of the day, I don't go, hey, I'm at work. What do you want? I stop and I talk to her and I care about her. The same thing as if a client calls me at 8 o'clock at night and I'm winding down, they go, I got to talk right now. Yeah, let's talk. What's up? Spend a few minutes with her and talk about what they're dealing with and then come back and be with the family. It's not a big deal because I'm one person everywhere I go. It's a lot easier to pop in and out of that.
Yeah, and you kind of made a good point. It's that word should, right? I think that gets kicked around a lot. And I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but I am not out of kilt, but I'm doing things that are not doing things that maybe I think I should do. And I know those aren't your words, but that's kind of how I rephrased
Yeah,
it in my brain.
you
And that's
think that
dangerous, right? That's a
you feel
dangerous
bad that
path,
you're not doing something that you think you should do,
right?
but it's not even a realistic, it's more just an overwhelming angst. That's why we have discipline. I was glad to hear you say you have a 1, 3, and 5 year or 1, 5, and 10 year plan, and you're looking at things quarterly. Man, that's smart because then you can set KPIs and measurables and goals and strategies against that. And then set a measured pace for it. So you can go, you know what, today I'm gonna punch out early. I'm gonna go bowling with my friends, or I'm gonna go read a book or ride a bike, or you can feel okay doing that. But if you don't, you could work till 10 o'clock at night and every night feel like you're behind and wake up first thing in the morning and feel panicked already because you already have this overwhelmingly, there's too much to do, right?
Yeah. So there's a good, maybe we can segue a little bit there. You're talking about the goals. One of the things that has come up in my groups, and even within my own company, and maybe especially within my own company, we have some pretty defined targets with our 10-year, our 3-year, our 1 year, and our quarterlies, right? We go through those. They're pretty set in stone in that we're not constantly course correcting, or that's the wrong word. I didn't use a lot of wrong words today. We're always adjusting, right? But we're not changing our focus. We try to, what we've decided to do, we try to stick with that. Now, that being said, that's tough right now. For me to look out 10 years is damn near impossible. So what we've done is we're more looking at on a week to week basis. What's the most important thing to do this week? And then we break that down into today, or maybe even this minute. And so where we're used to focusing on quarterly objectives, annual goals, and then long-term strategies, what's your recommendation as we're dealing with such wild unknowns right now?
Well, you know, nothing's really changed for the 10-year plan at this point. You know, when
Correct.
you really think about it, if you did a 10-year plan, it was probably fairly vague. I mean, you might say, I'm going to open another division, or I'm going to have built up in a business that's strong enough that I can not have to be there every day, and I've got a manager running it, and I'm looking for other investments to go invest in. That's a 10-year plan.
Right.
But so I don't know that anything's changed at that point.
Agreed.
Imagine saying that you've got your 14-year-old son and you want to say, when he's 24, here's what I want for him. I want him to have graduated college. I want him to have a steady girlfriend that he's engaged to, that he'll marry. and he knows how to be a man, and he knows how to treat her with love and respect and honor her. I want him to have healthy friendships, healthy financial guidelines so he's not broke. You'd have a vision of what you want to be at 24 and you'd work backwards. Same thing is with your business. You're just doing that, you work backwards. But if all of a sudden your son decides he doesn't want to go to college, I want to be a welder. Okay, so now, does it change the fact that I want him to have a good wife? Does it change the fact that I want him to have good health and good financial stability? No. It just means he's taken a bit of a different course. So today, what we're doing right now, there are amazing opportunities ahead of us. This thing is a pain in the butt. It is not the end of the world. You know, we don't have the Black Plague. It's just a really bad virus, and we'll get through it. And heck, we survived September 11. We survived Y2K. Do you remember the fear and paranoia that led the world? We were all going to implode, and the elevators were going to drop to the floor, and all our computers were going to crash. Satellites will come down. The airplanes will fall from the sky. Oh my gosh, right? We'll get through this just like we did there. So, but nothing changes other than the current steps we take to keep on track towards that goal. That just requires calm and focus.
Yeah, you know, that I agree with that completely. And again, I'm going to reach out to the audience, you guys. If you have questions, or even, you know, if you just like to share an experience, what you're going through or what you've learned through all of this, you can punch it into the questions or the chat feature. Or also, if you'll let me know, I can unmute your mic and you can do a live conversation with us. So that's certainly an option too.
Ooh, they should do that. That would be a lot of fun.
It would be. So yeah, please, anybody that would like to chat with us, let me know and I'll unmute you and we'll bring you into the conversation. As far as, you know, back to goals, you're absolutely right. You nailed it with the long-term goals don't change. They haven't changed at all. One thing that's been interesting just to me personally in trying to figure out how to sort through the immediate, the now factor, is I've been wanting to do a series of webinars for years. I've been wanting to do a podcast for years and haven't really acted on it until I was staring down the end of, you know, so much uncertainty. I can't really go out and continue to market and sell the way we were doing, but I don't want to fade away into irrelevance. And so that's kind of how this webinar series was born and why it's a week-to-week strategy. This week, it's been great. We've had people like yourself and others who will come on and share their skills, their knowledge with us. At some point, I expect that'll dry up, or we'll stop having people attend the webinars, and then we'll have to pivot and change the strategy a little bit. You know, but as we've taken our, I guess maybe just the strategic piece of it has been shortened, where we're talking, we're analyzing, and we're course correcting on a daily or a weekly basis instead of on a quarterly basis. Is that something that you found with other people as well, or with yourself maybe?
I don't know, the variables always come into the equation when you have something you didn't plan for, then nothing ever goes like you think it should. But I think you have to decide whether that's a distraction or whether that's a new road. What happens when your number one employee quits? What happens when your number one customer decides they're going to go somewhere else? What happens when you have some personal tragedy? These things that always come along are the burden of real good clarity of your vision. If you don't have a solid vision of what that you want to accomplish, anything and everything can be a distraction enough to derail you. I think if you hold tight to your vision, I have a vision. I want to change and impact the lives of 48 business leaders in Dallas every month. I have 21 right now. So I have a goal where I'm going to. I want 48. That's 4 groups of 12. I meet 4 times a month. The rest of the time I'm coaching people and helping and hanging with my family and enjoying a cigar and an afternoon with some of my friends, which by the way, we did a virtual cigar night the last 3 weeks. And everybody gets their laptop or their iPhone out and sits in their backyard and pours something to drink and has a cigar. And we have a 2-hour cigar together on video. It's just been awesome.
Oh, I love that.
But anyway, stay focused on your vision, know where you want to go, and that feeds you the resilience to stay on track.
I agreed. You know, and back to my own situation, I've had to analyze, you know, you say stay on track, is it a distraction, is it not a distraction? And so I've thought through that actually myself, is doing this right now a distraction, although it's something that I've been planning and talking about for a long time. So it's, there's a lot of introspection involved, and when something so drastic and dramatic happens, what I've found personally is that the distractions have fallen away. And at least for me personally, this has allowed me to do something that I've been talking about doing, but have been distracted for so long. And you talk about personal tragedy. We just had a death in the family. And so that, and then COVID, and then like all of a sudden distractions are gone because my ability to do anything has just been narrowed down to where I have to get laser focused. And so it's been interesting, and while I don't know what we'll do, what business as usual will be moving forward, I love that we've been able to finally do something that we've been talking about doing for a long time. So that has been kind of interesting. So I'm looking at the questions right now. Use my okay. We had a comment. Norm, he's actually a customer of mine. He dropped off, but he's back online, but he doesn't have a mic, which is fine. Norm, if you have any questions, go ahead and punch them in there. We're happy to dig into any conversation, any topics that you guys have, and back out to everybody there. Feel free to let me know if you'd like us to light up your mic. We've got about 15 minutes left before we'll wrap up. I don't know that I have any more immediate questions for you, Robert, but maybe you could share some, without giving away too much information, some personal stories or situations where you've seen people really kind of dig deep and have some sort of success. Let's share a success story of sorts.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that in the months ahead, as some of my clients have made tough decisions. Some of them have made a decision to cut people that they've wanted to get rid of for a long time, but felt like, I just don't feel like I have the bandwidth to do it, or, how will I ever survive with that employee, and now their hands kind of being forced because of some of the cutbacks they have to do. I think life has a way of taking away a distraction that actually opens our eyes to what we should be looking at in the first place. So you might think that running these podcasts is a distraction, but I think all the other stuff that got out of the way freed you up to see this clearly, and that's why you're able to pull it off so fast and get it going. So sometimes it can be a healthy part of that removes the distractions that keep us from being our best. One of the things that I have as a personal goal is my personal purpose in life is to help people remove things that keep them from being their best. I do it for a living, yes, but that's always been my personal purpose in my life. As a director of marketing, when I was with different companies, I was always trying to get people to build a culture and to build an organization that we could brag about through marketing. They'd always want me to go out and say how great they were, and I would say, why don't we be great, and then I'll just tell what we're doing. But instead, they just want me to say how great we are when we really weren't. And we'd brag about that we suck less than the other guys, so that tell them that story, right? And so I've just always been of the mindset that I want to help people remove the things that are holding back, because I think most people already know what to do. They're just not doing it. Like I know I should lose weight, but I'm not doing it. How come? I've got other things I'm working on. But I don't have to say, gee, I wonder if I should lose weight. You already know that, right? So my goal is to work with people to figure out what's holding you back from doing that. And whether it's your employees, having tough conversations, balancing your finances, those are the kind of things that I help people process through so they can get to a place of action.
Yeah, I love that line, or that, and I had it in my notes and I forgot to bring attention to that when we started, but in setting goals, I kind of know for the most part where I want to go. And I say that vaguely on purpose because things change over time, our priorities, our values change. But once I have a vision of where I want to get to, then I look at, as much as I look at how I'm going to get there, I look at what could go wrong, or what are the things that will prevent me from doing it. And so I love that was one of the things that you point out as how you're working with your clients, is identifying those, and removing those obstacles.
Yeah, I think they're making a lot of good decisions right now financially that is going to help them when the things come back on board. They'll have adjust the organization. The cuts they're making, they're painful. It's hard, but in a lot of cases they should have been done before. In some cases, they're supposed to have things that are written down, contracts, you know, we had a discussion with one of the people in our group who's a lawyer, and there's something called a force majeure, which means that if there's a catastrophe, that you have the right to not have to do what the contract says, which also means that your suppliers have the right to not do what the contract says. And there are people who have ignored the responsibilities of good, healthy contracts, good, healthy agreements and documentation, and now it's coming back and biting them in the butt. But now they're taking care of it. They're going back and they're making those changes. They're adjusting their employee base. They're adjusting their burn rate. They're making decisions to let go of some clients that have been bad clients for a long time, but they're afraid to let go, or getting rid of product lines that really aren't as profitable as they should be, and yet they hold on to them really just out of habit. So I think there's a lot of good things that are being changed for all my clients right now, that when this is all said and done, they'll come out much stronger than they were before.
Right, right. I've got a couple of things that have come up in the chat that let me throw those out. And by the way, this again is from Norm. I just have to say, Norm, are you on your boat right now? He's either on his boat or he's in Colombia. He's joining us from Colombia, and he sent me a picture sitting on the porch. There's a bottle of wine there overlooking a gorgeous view. I'm pointing it out because I'm insanely jealous. I love Norm. He's a great customer. Great guy, just a great guy. And but he always sends me these pictures that make me so dang jealous of his his other home in Colombia. He kind of goes back and forth. But anyway, so Norm said, believe that keeping the crew motivated is a must, keeping contact with existing clients, and then as a secondary thought, or at least it was second in timeline, motivating yourself comes first. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. And I can tell you from, personally, just what I've dealt with in the last couple months, man, that's key and it's tough. So do you have any words of wisdom there, Robert?
Yeah, I think for me, motivation comes from a vision again. When I see a vision of what I want to do, I get excited, I'm inspired. No one has to make me excited to do my job because I know what I do makes a difference. But if you lack vision and passion and all that drives it, it is hard to stay motivated. When it comes back to your employee base, no one can motivate anybody. All you can do is create an environment where they self-motivate. And if you have things that are so bad that they don't even want to go to work, or that being at work, they just feel so beat up, no one's ever going to get motivated in that. But you can't motivate them by offering lunches or having an incentive plan, or the Gallup Q12 that gets asked every year for employee engagement says 70% of the workforce is not actively engaged. You could argue that number and say it's less. Let's say it's only 50%. 50% of your employees are not actively engaged. That means that if you just got your team to be more focused and be more engaged, you could have more bottom line profit than ever. But it's hard to do that when they don't feel like they're respected or appreciated, or we let bad employees stay. And I see too many of those where they bring everybody else down. They're a cancer. And so that's a demotivating effect. So for you as a leader, make sure you hold on to your vision. I know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I get up every morning. I'm excited to go to work. I'm excited to talk to my clients. I'm making a difference in their lives. That fires me up. If you have to drag yourself to work every day, you need to find another job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of what we're saying, and I'm pointing this out because I'm just looking through the list of people on with us today. Not everybody here owns a business. We've got a couple of employees. We've got we've got a range, but almost all of what you just said applies to pretty much every aspect of our lives, right? Where you're saying, a bad team member can be a cancer in an organization. Well, that's true everywhere. That's true across the board, right? We can't motivate people, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. But we can create an environment where people want to be there, they want to thrive, they want to, come together as a group and work for the greater good of the organization. So we can do those things, and honestly, it's the fulfillment, the personal fulfillment that comes from work, that is the ultimate motivator. Am I wrong?
No, I think excellence is its own reward. When I look for people to be in our groups, I look for people who pursue excellence, because excellence is its reward. And when you do something right, you should be happy because you did it right. When you did something really well, you should be happy because you did it really well. God's given us the ability to work and to create and to lead and we should do it with excellence because that just feels great. Nobody wants to do a crappy job at something. I think I'll just do a half-assed job here. No one wants that, but we get overwhelmed because we lack focus and prioritization, and we lack discipline. And if we can have those things, we can be able to knock them out in order, get more done. We feel productive. We get joy out of it because we're doing it with excellence.
Right. One more time, guys, 10 minutes left. If anybody would like to throw out a subject, a story, a topic, or if you'd like us to unmute your mic and ask a question directly, go ahead and throw that into the Q&A line.
We just had a call with our group members and the trusted advisor group. That is another group I have. Those are lawyers and CPAs and bankers and HR, and we all came together just prior to this call and talked about what are the things that we should be thinking about. So I'll throw out some of the things that were shared during that call that would be helpful for any business owners that are doing things right now. Obviously, if you haven't heard about the CARES Act or the payroll protection program, these things are out there. You just need to make sure that you're talking with your CPA to understand which one's the right one to take. Do I take a tax credit or do I get the cash now? Really get some good wisdom from your CPA before you make some of these decisions. If you haven't talked to your lawyer in a while, do that. Check with them. Talk about the force majeure. Talk about the contracts. Talk about what are your rights from being paid and having to pay. Even from what could be a future lawsuit to you later on because you didn't follow protocol when it came to the quarantine requirements. All of our group members spent the first few weeks just trying to get within compliance of what the government was asking them to do, and even to go beyond that because there's so many unknowns. The worst thing is you don't do anything about it, and then you have a lawsuit 6 months from now because some guy got COVID-19 at work, took it home, gave it to grandma, and she died, and now they're going to sue you. You need to think. You need to be proactive in that. So if you haven't met with your lawyer, you haven't thought over these requirements, do so now. The other thing is that if you're really facing hard financial times, your lawyer and your banker can help you look at things other than bankruptcy. And so don't run into bankruptcy. Don't just stop paying things because you think, well, I'll just file bankruptcy. You may have other things that you can do before you go there. So be talking with your CPA and your banker about that. Certainly watch your cash. That came up quite a few times. And defer payments, find out who will work with you, talk to your vendors, your suppliers, talk to your customers, ask for some favors. You'd be surprised. I had a client who called up another customer and said, look, we're a lot of payments are being deferred. I need you to step up. And he paid them everything they owed him right there that day. So making a few phone calls. Not everyone's as cash strapped as everyone else thinks they are. So keep up on that. The guy who's the sales trainer for our group said prospecting is a real solid thing to do right now. You will probably not close anything right now, but you can prospect right now. So you should be reaching out to all those people that weren't interested in working with you in the past and saying, hey, now that everyone's at home doing Zoom, how's your cybersecurity? That would be a great one for you, Justin. Have you got all your employees with the proper protection on the computers they're using remotely? When's the last time you updated that, did a pen test? What are the kind of things you're doing to make sure you're not the next big ransomware that shuts down your business when this thing gets going again? So prospecting now is a great thing, even though you may not get the business right now because everyone's watching their cash, but you can line it up, do the quotes, get it teed up so that come late April or May, you're ready to get new business.
Right. Good point. And we did a presentation earlier on selling in uncertainty, I think was the topic of it. And we batted that around a lot. And, it's tough maybe to find that right message, but you're spot on. I mean, you can't stop, right? You can't stop communicating with people. You can't stop prospecting. You can't stop communicating with your existing clients. If anything, and I think you mentioned it either before the call or during the call, you talked about over communicating.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely key right now.
And keep listening to your staff, because if you're facing a hard time and you're thinking about doing layoffs or furloughs, and you go back and say, listen, I got some challenges here. What are some ways we can do it? We've had people come up with ideas and say, we're going to work every other day. This person said, hey, listen, I've been thinking about retiring anyway. I'll retire now and not have you lay off other people. I mean, there's all kinds of creative things you can do. Your team's not stupid. You've hired them for a reason. Ask them, talk to them, listen to them, get them creative. Some of the best ideas are going to come up because you listen to your team. And at a time right now when you only see it from your perspective out, see it from their perspective to you might open a whole nother line of opportunities that you hadn't considered. Get with your team, get with them regularly, let them know this, be transparent, let them know the story, and let them bring new resources and new ideas to the equation.
Robert, have you ever read the book, The Great Game of Business?
I have.
Okay, so that's what you reminded me of as you were talking about that. Such a fantastic book. I highly recommend it for everybody on the call, but just that concept right there of just being open with your team and picking their brains and bring those problems to them. It is amazing how quickly you can solve problems when you get everybody involved in the solution, instead of thinking that you have to figure it all out on your own.
Well, and take out the emotion. You know, this is it's like a machine. You've got some wrenches and you've got a machine, you've got some things, but let's take out the emotion of it. Let's look at what can we do with this situation. This is a machine that is having some hard times. Let the other people see it from a non-emotional perspective. You as the owner, you have a lot of emotion attached to things you're not even aware of. And so letting your team speak and share what's their perspective helps you see that maybe you're seeing it a little harsher than you need to be.
Right, agreed. Well, let's wrap up on that note. I would just like to thank you again, Robert, for being here. Thank everybody, the attendees participating and joining us today. These are all being recorded. We will send out a link that you're welcome to watch. You're welcome to share that out. And with your permission, Robert, I'll include your contact information. If anybody'd like to reach out, afterwards, maybe it's not comfortable to ask a question live on a presentation like this, but if you'd like to ask Robert a question, if you have any technical questions for me, we are offering free technical advice these days. We're doing free home security. We're doing free, really just anything that we can do to help the community. We're trying to do that. So reach out to either one of us. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Robert, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And I look forward to an ongoing relationship.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, Justin.
All right. Take care, everybody.